Update. Now, about 3 months ago, Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa appointed a panel to advise on an appropriate national minimum wage for the country. At NEDLAC in Johannesburg yesterday, the Deputy President released a report with the recommendations of the panel of advisors in a process that included international labor experts. An amount of 3,500 proposed minimum wage was arrived at. The Deputy President clarified that this is by no means meeting a decent living wage, but a starting point. Joining us now in our studios in Johannesburg for more on this is Professor Imraan Valodia. He is the Dean of Commerce, Law and Management at Wits, but he's also the chairperson of the advisory panel. Prof, good morning to you and welcome to Morning Live.
Hi, good morning.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. Now, talk to us about as to how the panel arrived at this proposal of 3,500 as minimum wage.
Right. So we were trying to find a middle ground and some sort of balance between two real issues. I think when you look at the information and you look at the data on what are the sort of patterns of earning in South Africa, I think you're quite struck by the fact that 47% of South Africans who work earn less than the 3,500. So to sort of get it at that level would make a big impact on improving the lives of those who earn below it. What you also have to deal with on the other side is the danger that if you sort of push up the wage too high, you could have a problem of job destruction. Yeah. So as the wage goes up, you're concerned about reducing the numbers of employment opportunities.
Because as it is now, many analysts are already saying that this might lead to some job losses.
Yes, so we looked at all of this. We looked at all of this evidence, and we were quite lucky that we were doing this with a lot of research. So there was a significant amount of research that's been done, and we were trying to make a sense of how much we should rely on different types of evidence. So we were trying to find the sort of balance with being quite decisive about taking the step, but then also reducing the dangers that would go along with it.
So what will happen next, Prof? Will there perhaps be a mechanism to monitor compliance of such? Because we do know that recently an international journalist compiled a documentary that was titled Bitter Grapes, Slavery in the Vineyard. So will there be a mechanism perhaps to monitor a compliance of these recommendations?
Right, so we've also made some quite substantial recommendations on the institutional design. So you need all of the systems behind the wage to make sure that you can assess it, that you can kind of have the data to allow you to monitor the system. You want to always be alive to how it's impacting on the labor market, but you also want to have the enforcement mechanisms in place. I think it's accepted by all of the sort of parties that the system that we have now, that there's significant problems with the enforcement. So part of our proposals is to significantly improve the kind of improve the systems of enforcement and to ensure that the Department of Labour has the resources to enforce.
All right.
But one important point we're making in the proposal on this is that you want to have a 2-year adjustment period where you allowing firms to adjust to this new regime. And in those 2 years, we're saying that the enforcement shouldn't be to sort of penalize those who don't do it, but rather to provide the capacity for them to be able to make the adjustment.
So how is it going to work? The proposal will be in place for 2 years with no adjustment. Does it necessarily mean that there won't be any salary increments during that period?
All of the normal collective bargaining systems in the labour market would operate.
Yeah.
All of the sectoral determinations that set minimums would be operating. Part of what you have to do when you introduce something like this is to have a campaign to make sure that the sort of public understands it, because you want to increase the sort of power of the right that the workers have. So we've specifically proposed the number of 20 Rand an hour because it's a nice round number, yeah. And we would hope that there would be a campaign to basically publicize this and ensure that we all sort of come to believe that this is the number. So there's some interesting examples in the world. In one of the countries, the national soccer team, kind of on their jerseys for a while played with what the rate of the minimum wage would be, yeah. Because you want society to make the adjustment from where we are to where we would like to be.
All right. Now, the report also talks about exceptions for farm workers and domestic workers. How is it going to work? Because, for example, we do know that the Department of Labour has recently announced a minimum wage of just 2,400 for domestic workers. How is it going to work? Part of what we've had to deal with is to assess the evidence in specific sectors. In where we have sectors that pay quite low wages at present, if you sort of boost up the wage by too much, you're then going to have job losses in those sectors. Yeah. So we've sort of pegged those two sectors at 90% for farm workers and 70% for domestics. But it's part of a process. What we say in the report is that we should try to move as quickly as we can towards a universal system. So it would apply to everyone. But what you have to do when you introduce this is make sure that your adjustment process isn't going to hurt precisely those that you're trying to help. So it's only really in the adjustment process that you would have these special provisions. All right. So what is next now? Public comment on the feasibility of the recommendations, I believe.
So what we have now is a report, and it's our report.
Yeah, it's your report.
Not the Deputy President's report.
And it's just the recommendations.
It's just the recommendations.
Yeah,
all of the parties now have to engage with it, and we'll need to see over the next while how things go.
All right, Prof, that's where we're going to leave it, but thank you so much for clarifying the recommendations for us. Thank you very much.
Right,
there you have it. Chairman of the minimum wage panel set up by Cyril Ramaphosa, Professor Imraan Valodia, and he was basically clarifying this issue for us. We're taking a break. Morning Live continues after this.